CSCD1 of the Mail Order Pharmacy Accreditation Program is a classic list checking kind of standard. As I've explained in the written part of this blog post, this is a rather simple standard if you're disciplined about it. There are 19 different pieces of information that you need through one means or another to get to all of your consumers post-enrollment. I won't go through all of them here. I want to keep this fairly brief, but just know that you're going to need, for your own sake, to make up an audit sheet. And imagine it both from the inside and from the outside. In other words, as you're developing your materials, or as you're reviewing your materials, first of all, see it from your perspective. Take a particular piece of financial information that URAC requires you to disclose to your consumers, for example, and say, all right, from our perspective, what do we want to be transparent about? What are we required to be transparent about with this standard? And how do we do that? And then imagine yourself from the consumer's perspective, all your consumers' perspective, and you may have a variety of kinds of consumers. Consumers who don't have computers, consumers who do have computers, consumers who speak Spanish, consumers who speak English. Think of it from the outside, from all of these consumers' perspectives. Because I guarantee you the URAC reviewer who's looking at your disclosure methodology will be looking at it from the perspective of the consumer, and I mean all of your consumers. So, you may have all of this information on your website. But if you've got anybody at all who might not have access to the internet, then you're going to need to have alternative methods for those people. Not alternative methods for only a few of these 19 elements, but for all of them. Now, none of these elements of this standard are mandatory, but all of them carry the maximum number of points, and that is 4. So you'd be it would be a very good idea for you to make sure that you gather up all these points. Because if you do, it's 80 points, and that's about as big as a clump of points as you're ever going to find in a single standard. Now, one other thing that I talk about a bit in my written note, but I want to emphasize here, this may not apply to you and your organization. It may be that all of your clients retain the consumer communication piece for themselves. So after enrollment, they're the ones in charge of sending out all of this information. And if that's the case, then it doesn't apply to you. Now, how do you communicate that it doesn't apply to you? If you go into a CreditNet, there's no way to submit information without a document. Well, what we've learned from talking with reviewers is that it suggests that you need a document. That fact suggests that you need a document even for the standards that don't apply for you. What kind of document? Well, in this case, I'd recommend an attestation from a senior executive who has authority to attest to such things. And that attestation could be quite simple. It should be signed and dated, and should be signed and dated within the cycle that you're in, the accreditation cycle that you're in. Not a problem right now, but in 3 years, you'll need to do a new attestation once you go through a second time. So the attestation can be 1 or 2 lines. Such and such an organization has not been delegated consumer communications responsibilities post-enrollment, signed and dated by the senior executive. Now, sadly, you don't get those 80 points, but at least you don't lose those 80 points against 80 points you're expected to get. Non-applicable standards simply go away. Again, I recommend that you use an audit template for yourself. Just make a list of every one of these points in a way that your communications people can use it. If you're in your policies and procedures, make sure you have every single one of these points, these required elements of consumer post-enrollment communication in the policy and procedure, and then again in the actual disclosure on the website and on any printed material that goes to consumers post-enrollment.